When we're thinking about how to evacuate during a disaster, the question always comes to our mind, how are we going to be able to do that? Well, the way most people do, by car. So people get in their cars all the time. So sometimes you'll see those things where you'll have a Category 5 hurricane, it'll be barreling towards some state in Florida, it'll be Florida or somewhere else, and everyone's having to leave. And you'll see these really long, really long evacuation lines. But those are instances where people have enough time because with hurricanes, you get plenty of warnings. So normally you'll get even as much as 120 hours of notice. So that's 5 days in advance. So some people evacuate, yes, even that early. But what do you do when there's a raging wildfire and you have to evacuate? Why is it that the lines are so long, and why is it that people aren't able to get out? Why is it that sometimes we have to shelter in place? Well, I'm going to talk to you today about exactly the reasons why, given the mechanics of an evacuation. So I'm going to talk to you about the necessity of having a temporary wildfire structure because of the mechanics of evacuations. So how do evacuations really work? Well, they seem pretty simple, right? You get in your car, you're going to go drive somewhere. Makes sense. Well, emergency management departments all over the country, they are required to create what we call an evacuation plan. Duh, that makes sense, right? So they are there to calculate how it is that we need to evacuate out of a city. So what they will do is that they will look at the entire transportation system for their area and determine how long is it going to take to be able to get X number of millions of people out of town. And in Los Angeles County, it was tough because they only had 37 full-time employees. 37 full-time employees for 10 million people, a massive, massive county. And so they had to try to figure out all this evacuation at once. So I'm going to talk to you about why it is the evacuation in the Palisades and Eaton fires didn't work. Why it is that sometimes there was a necessity for a temporary wildfire shelter, even one made out of school supplies. So normally what we do is we assume that you have a population, and what they're going to do is in an evacuation, let's say that you have a raging wildfire. Okay, so you have the wildfire, and the wildfire is in this direction. Okay, so that we understand. So with the wildfire is here, and let's say we think that the wildfire is moving in this direction. So by doing that, we know that it's going to keep going this way. Therefore, all the people who are impacted or potentially impacted by the evacuation need to move in this direction. Totally makes sense. Here's the problem. In Los Angeles, I don't think it's any secret to realize that it has kind of a traffic problem. Even in days with no evacuation, even in days when there's no wildfire, even days where there's no earthquake. So whenever there is natural traffic, they have to account for that. But then it gets trickier. What happens when everybody, not just the commuter, not just the people going to school every day, not just the people going to work every day, but the people who never go out at all, or people who very rarely have to drive, and they certainly don't drive during traffic times, they all suddenly enter the freeway at the same moment. That becomes extremely problematic because now you have all the lanes of traffic that are completely covered. And then on this side, which would be naturally moving this direction, so basically towards the wildfire, there you have very few cars. There is a system that emergency management implements, particularly in states affected by hurricanes. It's called Contraflow. What a Contraflow plan is, and that's what emergency managers create, a Contraflow plan. When they do that, they have essentially decided that this is unworkable. This is not going to happen. So what they do is they open up the lanes of traffic. So let's say that this is the eastbound lane, okay? And that this is the westbound. So this part of the freeway naturally moves east. This one naturally moves west. And for today, we're gonna pretend that the wildfire is actually in the west. So no one is moving west, everyone is moving east. Easy enough. Well, what they will do in a Contraflow plan is that they will convert these lanes into evacuation lanes. So instead of having 2 lanes moving eastbound, you now have 4 lanes moving eastbound. The trouble with that is that there was so much organizational mismanagement and so much disorganization that they couldn't even put this plan together. There was no time. They had no idea who was coordinating. And a Contraflow plan, I began my career in Louisiana. That's really where I cut my teeth right after Hurricane Katrina. I determined that the Contraflow plan was based on incredible coordination between lots of different agencies. If you don't have that coordination, this simply cannot occur. And in this fire, add to the fact that there were people who were given false alerts. Add to the fact that you have people who are trying to get out and don't have any other way to leave, who have never left before. So you have a complicating factor. You have people trying to get up to those folks so that they can get out. So now you have people fighting the flow going up. Then in addition, you have rescue teams trying to get in. And the rescue teams are fighting this flow of traffic. That is an invitation for jams here, for jams here, and for jams here. And then all of a sudden you have a large number of people trying to go in the exact same direction, and they simply can't. Also, there were so many false alerts that we need to add even more, because you have people who have no reason to be on the freeway, people who don't need to evacuate, and people who just panic. And that happens constantly. In every disaster I've ever seen, people just panic. They just decide, I have to evacuate, I can't run the risk. And then there's people who are really smart planners. People who say, I know it's gonna take me longer to evacuate, so I'm going to start early even if there is no threat. You can now see the number of arrows going all the way across. That tacks on a huge number of cars in a freeway that was not designed to take on this many vehicles. So as a result, you had huge numbers of people all trying to get on the freeway at the same time for various reasons, or reasons that they didn't want to have at all, and it created the traffic jam that you saw on the freeways. That prevented people from being able to evacuate. So the reason why I created this structure was, if you simply can't evacuate, this may be what you think is your only option. I'm going to prove to you on my main channel that it is not. That there is a way to create a temporary structure to protect yourself from evacuations, regardless of the ones that you happen to face, whether it's natural, it's man-made, or it's a whole lot else.